Chrisean Rock just exposed herself on camera, and what she said about God, Blueface, and her son will end her career forever. In a world where most people confess their sins to a priest, Chrisean Rock just confessed hers to a live stream, and the internet caught every word before her PR team could scrub it. Because past the curtain of the smiling gospel singer Rebrand, she has been trying to sell you for weeks. Something colder is moving. Something calculated. Something that looks less like salvation and a whole lot more like a woman on the ropes running the oldest scam in the industry, using the pulpit as a parachute. And what she just admitted about Blueface, about her own child, about the money, about the gospel music now, pivots she could not even define when asked. This is not a redemption arc. This is a masterclass in how a clout economy eats its own, and Chrisean Rock is starring in the tape. Front and center. Wearing scripture like a Halloween costume and daring anybody to say the word out loud. Now, before we go any deeper into this, and trust me, we are going deep, because the receipts are stacked and the tape does not lie, I need you to understand exactly what we are watching. Chrisean Rock did not wake up one morning touched by grace. Chrisean Rock woke up one morning and realized the algorithm was moving on without her. That is the story. That is the whole story. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Not one more live stream. Not one more baptism selfie. Not one more staged prayer clip on the timeline. You will spot the con every time. Let us rewind. You have probably seen the clip by now. Somebody on camera asks Chrisean Rock a simple question. Is you on the track? And Chrisean Rock, straight-faced, cool as a cucumber, says the words that broke the internet this week. I make gospel music now. Gospel music. Chrisean Rock. The same woman whose entire brand was built on chaos, boxing matches, on-camera meltdowns, tattoos of a man who publicly disowned her, and lyrics that would peel the paint off a church wall. That Chrisean Rock. Gospel music now. And the second the interviewer pushed back, you make what music? You could see the flicker in her eyes. Because Chrisean Rock had not rehearsed the follow-up. She had rehearsed the announcement. She had not rehearsed what secular even meant. When she was asked to define it, she stumbled. She reached. She said the word without knowing the word. And in that half-second of dead air, the whole rebrand collapsed on itself in real time. Step back a second. Because this is where it gets surgical. What Chrisean Rock did on that camera is not new. It is a formula. It is the oldest formula in the celebrity rebrand playbook. When the numbers dip, when the cameras stop chasing, when the boyfriend moves on and the storyline runs dry, you do not retire. You baptize. You wrap yourself in scripture like a bulletproof vest and dare the internet to criticize you, because now any critic looks like a hater of God himself. That is the play. That is the whole con. And Chrisean Rock ran it so clumsily this week that even her most loyal defenders in the comments could not pretend not to see it. The seams were showing. The stitching was crooked. The audience was already halfway out the door. Here is the piece that separates this from every other celebrity crash out. Chrisean Rock is not just rebranding herself. She is dragging her child into the marketing. And this is where the story turns from a shady rebrand into something the tabloids cannot laugh off. Because for months now, Chrisean Rock has been insisting loudly, publicly, in every direction the camera points, that the child is Blueface's son. Loudly. Repeatedly. Even after Blueface himself has said, in interview after interview, on live stream after live stream, that the child is not his. He has said it plainly. He has said it under oath of public record. He has said it in language so blunt the clips have been screenshotted 1,000,000 times over. And still, Chrisean Rock will not let it go. Why? Because the moment she lets go of the Blueface storyline, Chrisean Rock evaporates from the public conversation. That is not an insult. That is math. Cold, sober, uncomfortable math. Zoom the lens out. As far as anyone can actually name a moment where Chrisean Rock was famous without Blueface attached, the ledger is empty. Every viral clip, every headline, every trending moment, you can trace the tether right back to that man. He gave her the platform. He gave her the storyline. He gave her the toxic energy that her personality feeds on like oxygen. And now, with Blueface publicly done, publicly moved on, publicly telling anyone who will listen that Chrisean Rock is not his baby mama and that child is not his son, Chrisean Rock is left holding a brand that was never actually hers. So what does she do? She reaches for the biggest brand in human history. She reaches for God. Because if the man will not tether himself to her anymore, maybe scripture will. Maybe the pulpit will. Maybe the pews will fill a hole a co-star used to occupy. And that is the part that makes this so dangerous. That is the part one want you sitting with. Because there is using the church as inspiration, plenty of artists have done that beautifully, sincerely, over the decades. And then there is using the church as a costume. There is using God's name as a PR press release. There is walking into a live stream, mumbling, I make gospel music now, and then 2 weeks later posting the exact same chaotic content that got you here in the first place. That is not a testimony. That is a Trojan horse. And Chrisean Rock rode it straight into a wall this week. Full speed. No brakes. No exit ramp. Watch her body language when the truth pressure hits. Chrisean Rock, when cornered, does something specific. She reaches. She grabs for words that are not there. She fabricates on the fly. When she was pressed about Blueface being around the child, she pulled out her phone, mid-sentence, and started scrolling through her camera roll, live on camera, looking for a photo, a receipt, a date, anything. Live photo, June 10th. Look at the timestamp. Brightness up. She narrated the search out loud like a woman assembling evidence in front of a jury she was already losing. And here is the tell. Chrisean Rock did not have the story ready. Because the story was not true. Nobody who is telling the truth needs to build the truth in front of you. Truth arrives finished. Lies arrive under construction. Chrisean Rock's story arrived with the scaffolding still up. She said Blueface comes to Baltimore. Behind closed doors. Off camera. That he shows up for the child, but does not want to look like, and I quote, a corny dad. Think about that sentence. Think about the architecture of that lie. Chrisean Rock is asking you to believe that Blueface, one of the most terminally online rappers of his entire generation, a man whose whole personality is documenting every second of his life for cameras and content, is secretly, quietly, humbly showing up as a private father figure and asking her to keep it off the internet. Blueface. The corny dadiverse ghost father. Nobody with a functioning frontal lobe believes that sentence. Nobody. Not one person watching that live stream with a straight face bought it. And Chrisean Rock could feel it landing wrong even as she said it. Meanwhile, Blueface, on his end, has been laughing this off in real time. Because Blueface is not hiding. Blueface is on live stream saying the words plainly, it is not my kid, it is not my baby mama, I am not claiming that, I am not claiming her. And then in the same breath, he explains why he was ever nice to the child in the first place. He said it clean. If he is around a woman and her kids are in the room, he is going to be kind to them. He is going to give them a little handshake, rough them up, play tickle monster, do the uncle routine. Because that is basic decency. That is not paternity. That is manners. And Chrisean Rock, watching those clips, decided to weaponize basic manners into a claim of fatherhood. That is the whole con laid bare. That is the whole ugly play in one sentence. And here is where the story gets darker, because we have not even talked about the child yet. Chrisean Rock's son is not well. That is not a rumor. That is not a hater blog. That has been documented across multiple live streams, multiple months, multiple visible red flags that anyone paying attention can see. And when Chrisean Rock is asked about her son's condition, she pretends everything is fine. She waves it off. She smiles. She spins. She acts like the child is thriving in a household that we can all see, from the outside, is a storm system with wheels. That is not motherhood. That is performance. That is a woman who is so committed to the fiction of her own life that she will let a child pay the tax of that fiction just to keep the brand afloat. One more news cycle. One more headline. One more trending tab. Chrisean Rock. Chrisean Rock. Chrisean Rock. Say the name enough times and you start to notice something. Chrisean Rock is only Chrisean Rock when Blueface is in the sentence. Without him, she is a boxer who does not box, a rapper who does not rap, a gospel singer who cannot define the word gospel. Chrisean Rock is a headline that requires a co-star. And every co-star she has tried to plug in since, every man, every stunt, every reality show, every rebrand has failed to hit the same numbers because none of them supply what Blueface supplied, which was chaos with a paycheck. That is the drug. That is the addiction. And now Chrisean Rock is going through the ugliest kind of withdrawal on camera, and she is calling it faith. She is calling it healing. She is calling it anything but what it actually is, which is the sound of a career collapsing in slow motion. Look at the pattern. She tried boxing. Chrisean Rock in the ring, gloves up, headlines for a month. Numbers dipped. She tried podcasts. Chrisean Rock behind the microphone, opinions on everything, headlines for a week. Numbers dipped. She tried reality television. Numbers dipped. She tried new boyfriends, plural, on record, and each one lasted about as long as a milk carton. Numbers dipped. She tried motherhood as content, and that one did not just dip. That one turned the entire internet against her, because you can feel the exploitation through the screen. Numbers dipped again. And now, out of options, with the algorithm losing interest and the timeline finding new characters to obsess over, Chrisean Rock has reached for the biggest lever left on the console. She has reached for God. And she has done it so cynically, so obviously, so recently after the last stunt failed, that even her fans are struggling to sell it back to themselves. The comment sections tell you everything. Even the diehards are quiet this week. Even the ride-or-dies are scrolling past. Here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. There was a man, another man, not Blueface, who once offered to take a DNA test for that same child. A man who wanted to know. A man who wanted to step up. Chrisean Rock refused him the test while he was alive. That man is no longer with us. And now, with him gone, with the only living rival claim silenced by tragedy, Chrisean Rock has doubled down on Blueface as the father, knowing full well that the one voice that could have contested her narrative is buried. Sit with the moral gravity of that for a second. Because that is not a shady rebrand. That is not clout chasing. That is the coldest chess move I have seen a celebrity make on a public platform in a long time, and nobody in the mainstream press wants to touch it because it hurts to say out loud. But we are going to say it. Because pretending we did not see it makes us complicit. And the kid at the center of this deserves better than a room full of pretending adults. And Chrisean Rock knows the pressure is closing. You can hear it in the audio. When Blueface camp calls, she plays victim. When they hang up, she starts stuttering into the camera, repeating herself, spinning in place. Something wrong with him. Something wrong with him. Something wrong with him. He want me to. He want me to. He want me to. A woman running out of script. Playing the same broken record because she does not have a new song. That is not a woman in her healing era. That is a woman whose lies have gotten too heavy to carry, and the seams are finally splitting on livestream. In real time. In front of everybody. And the internet has the receipts saved in triplicate. Here is the wide shot. This is not just a Chrisean Rock story. This is a warning label for an entire generation of internet-famous women who built their brands on a man and never diversified. Chrisean Rock is the case study. She is what happens when the co-star leaves, the storyline dies, the boxing gym gets boring, the podcast does not hit, the reality show gets canceled, the baby's paternity gets contested, and the only lever left to pull is the one marked faith. And when you pull that lever cynically, when you pull it as a marketing gimmick, the audience always, eventually, always feels it. Faith is one of the few brands the internet can still smell fakeness on from a mile away because everybody has a grandmother, everybody has a childhood church memory, everybody has a moment in their life when God was the only real thing in the room. And when Chrisean Rock walks up to that microphone and says the words gospel music now without being able to define secular music, without being able to name a hymn, without being able to explain what she believes, the audience knows. The audience always knows. And this week, the audience finally said it out loud. In the replies. In the quote tweets. In the reaction videos. Everywhere at once. Meanwhile, and here is the twist the culture writers keep missing, Blueface is winning this exchange in ways that do not even look like winning. Blueface is not chasing headlines. Blueface is not announcing a new gospel album. Blueface is not crying on livestream. Blueface is just letting Chrisean Rock keep talking, because every time Chrisean Rock opens her mouth, Blueface's version of the story gets stronger by comparison. That is the coldest kind of PR, the kind where you say nothing and let the other person hang themselves on their own timeline. And Chrisean Rock, bless her, keeps handing him the rope. Every live stream, every camera roll receipt, every stutter, every rebrand, every stumble in front of the camera she used to own. You want to know how you can tell the gospel rebrand is fake? Watch what she does next. Watch how quickly the gospel music now pivot gets quietly walked back the second a bigger opportunity, a reality show, a Blueface reconciliation storyline, a boxing rematch, walks through the door. Because faith, for Chrisean Rock, is a coat. She will wear it while it is cold. The second the weather changes, the coat comes off, and she will leave it on a chair somewhere and forget she ever owned it. And when the timeline reminds her, because the timeline always reminds, she will pretend it was a phase, a season, a moment, a growth arc. Anything but what it actually was. Which was a marketing decision made in a moment of desperation by a woman who has run out of ideas. That is not a spiritual awakening. That is a spreadsheet decision dressed up in Sunday clothes. Now, and this is the part one want you to really hear, I am not saying redemption is not real. I am not saying people cannot change. I am not saying God does not work through unlikely vessels, because he does, and history proves it 1,000 times over. What I am saying is that redemption does not announce itself on a live stream with a smirk and a soundbite. Redemption is quiet. Redemption is slow. Redemption does not need a hashtag or a merch drop or a rebrand campaign or a paternity dispute or a camera roll receipt. And when somebody's version of Finding God arrives packaged with all 5 of those things, you are not watching a testimony. You are watching a product launch. And Chrisean Rock this week launched a product she could not even describe when the interviewer pushed her for one sentence about it. Not one clean sentence. Not one honest line. Just the word secular echoing back at her like she had never actually heard it before. And the child. Always come back to the child. Because in every one of these celebrity meltdown cycles, there is one silent character who never gets to speak, and it is always the kid. The kid who did not ask to be born into the algorithm. The kid whose paternity is a live stream headline. The kid whose mother's job is essentially to keep the news cycle burning hot enough to pay the rent. The kid who is going to grow up one day, open a laptop, and watch every clip his mother ever recorded about him, about his father, about the men who were and were not and might have been, about the drama and the boxing and the gospel pivot and the tears and the fabricated timestamps. That kid is the only person in this story who does not have a lawyer, a PR rep, or a live stream. That kid is the collateral damage of Chrisean Rock's refusal to be irrelevant for a single afternoon. Read that sentence twice. Then ask yourself who is really paying for this brand. So, where does this leave Chrisean Rock? Where does it leave the pivot? Where does it leave the gospel career that will not survive the week? Case closed on the honeymoon phase, I will tell you that. Chrisean Rock is entering the ugliest chapter of a celebrity arc, the chapter where the audience stops being amused and starts being tired. And tired audiences do not come back. Tired audiences do not stream the gospel EP. Tired audiences do not buy the merch. Tired audiences scroll past. And the algorithm, which is the only god Chrisean Rock has ever actually served, will notice the scroll rate drop before any pastor does. And when the algorithm decides you are finished, no rebrand, no scripture, no camera roll live photo receipt, and no stuttering damage control live stream will save you. Not this time. Not this cycle. Not with this much rope already given. And here is the piece nobody has said yet, so I will say it. Chrisean Rock is not going to walk away from Blueface. Chrisean Rock cannot afford to walk away from Blueface. Because the moment she does, the story ends. The tattoos on her body are not decorations. They are a business plan. They are a lifetime attachment to a co-star who has already made it clear the show is over. And every time Chrisean Rock tries to launch a solo season, the numbers remind her she was never the show. She was the co-star. And co-stars who forget that end up doing gospel rebrands and interviews they did not